Why business presentations? Why do you want to, think about 5 ways that you can transform, improve, enhance your presentations? Well, the bottom line is that, presenting is a key business skill because a lot of people think, oh, presentations, you're just standing in front of 100 people at an event and all that sort of stuff. Well, it's not when you think about it because, you're presenting, you could be presenting to a new client, and that could be sitting like you're seeing in front of you now, around a desk, one to one, a couple of you, couple of them, maybe one to one. And you're just, doing your kind of your presentation about your business and why they should be interested. You might be presenting when you're doing a client review. I expect most of you have got some sort of regular clients, and chances are you'll go out and see them once a quarter and check everything's good. And client reviews are a great presentation opportunity. Then, of course, if you do get the chance to present at a business event, well, that's fantastic because you're going to get an audience. I don't know, 20 people, 30 people, 100 people who are going to, hopefully be engaged by you for all the time that you've got there. You might be doing an internal presentation, which is a team briefing. And sometimes, internal presentations, I've noticed over the years that I've been involved with them or I've witnessed them. I think sometimes, people don't put enough time and effort into an internal presentation because it can make a huge difference to your business if you get your team briefing kind of presentation right. And also, of course, if you get your presentation right, that you might be pitching or presenting to your management team about an idea you've got or something you're working on, or indeed maybe to investors as well. So we are doing business presentations in all sorts of different areas and formats. And of course, sometimes they'll be in person, and sometimes, as I'm delivering to you now, they will be virtual. And the kind of things that I'm going to share with you, the 5 ways, they work whether it's in person or virtual. But, there are different skills involved in both of those as well. But that maybe is for another time. But whatever you're presenting, whatever situation, it is a golden opportunity. So I'm here today over the next 18 minutes to make sure you don't waste that golden opportunity by giving you 5 things to think about, to work with. And if you just take away one of them, it will make a difference to the way, your presentations ultimately are delivered and the success, which is the ultimate goal, of course, of them. So 5 things to think about, 5 ways to transform your presentations. Number 1 is audience and outcome. So if I'm in your audience, these, I believe, are the things that I want to happen to me. Okay. And they're easy to remember. This is something you might want to take a screenshot of. They are 4 E's. I want to be engaged by you. I want to be educated by you. So I don't want to sit there and listen to stuff I already know. I want to be enthused, okay? Because, presumably all presentations will have some sort of, for want of a term, call to action. And to a degree, I want to be entertained. Now, I'm not going to suggest you tell jokes or juggle fire or something like that. But the whole thing has to be kind of a memorable, impactful, inspiring experience. So to get this right, the key thing to me in any presentation is audience first, you second. And that's so important because so many people decide to do it the other way around. And I'll show you why that's not a good idea. Before we do that, a couple of questions that you always need to ask yourself before you even start preparing your presentation. Number 1 is, who are you presenting to? So find that out. That's really important. And most of the time, that's going to be easy for you to know who that is going to be. And also, what are they expecting? And if you're not sure about that, ask them. So if you're going to deliver a presentation to a client or a new client, or you're going to an event even, just find out what the expectation is around what you are going to be presenting. And then crucially, what do the audience and you want the outcome to be? So when you finish this presentation, what do you want to have happened? I get lots of people ask me the question, if I see me in the audience and they do a presentation, say, what do you think of my presentation, Trevor? I said, well, what was the outcome you were aiming for? And they look at me a little blank. So a presentation has to have an outcome. Otherwise, how do you know what you're going to put in your presentation? It's what I call the purpose of your presentation. And then, of course, you have to think about, well, you've got this audience there. They're going to be in front of you in the same way you're here for me today. So why should they listen to you? What's going to make them think, oh, that's a good presentation. I want to engage with it throughout. So some of the things that you can do about that are things like, focus on the benefits. Okay, so if you're promoting your product or service, presenting your product or service, don't talk about the things that are in it for you. Talk about what's in it for me as the audience. What am I going to get? What difference is it going to make? And if you're not sure about the difference between benefits and features when you're doing a presentation, then look it up. Okay, we can do a whole section on that. But make sure that I'm in your audience. It feels that the presentation is for me only. Okay, regardless of others there, and it's all about the benefits that I'm going to get. And if you can do that, you'll start to get a presentation which becomes compelling, almost irresistible. And importantly as well, it keeps flowing. That's another key thing for your audience. You could have a great start and then it all goes flat for the next 15 minutes. So keep it flowing. That's really, really important. Right. Number 2 is you've got to have a non-waffly start. Okay. I'm not sure whether I've got the spelling of that. You know what I mean, of that word right. The non-waffly start, because first impressions do count, don't they? You're sitting there thinking, you're in the audience of that presentation. You're going to be making your mind up fairly early whether it's worth listening to. So what we want is what we don't want is any rambling at the beginning. So, it's great to be here, everybody. Oh, that coffee I had earlier was really good. And what a wonderful building you've invited me to present in. Or I can see you all on screen. You're looking great today. Now, I did some of that in the preamble, okay, before we got going, but certainly not when we actually pressed the button and started the presentation. And most of the time when you're presenting, you might not be doing the preamble. You might be going straight into the presentation. Nor do I want some apologies from you. I don't want to know that you've got a cold or you've got a sore throat or the dog ate your notes or you only got told last night you were doing this presentation. Okay, no apologies. It sets you off in a negative way. So, and a number of people, if you think about it, who default to this, I'm really sorry, and all that, it's a kind of nervous reaction sometimes, but don't do it. All right. No matter how crap you might be feeling, I, as your audience, do not want to know that. You've just got to get over it and be the best of you for the next 15, 20 minutes or however long your presentation is. Nor do I want to start, hear from you right at the beginning how great you are. Okay. I don't need to know that you've won tons of cups and loads of awards. So no drum banging, ladies and gentlemen. You know who I am before you go to the presentation, or you should do, because, there'll have been some sort of setup for the presentation. So I don't need to know how great you are. I'm there because I know that you're good at what you do, your expertise. So you don't have to tell me. If you want to tell me at the end, not at the beginning. The beginning is about the audience. It's not about you, the presenter. So don't start with all the drum banging. Loads of people do. Oh, it's so boring for the audience. They're not interested. Okay. So, that's a harsh reality of it. So here are 3 ways you could start your presentation to avoid that non-waffle start. Number 1 is a short story or anecdote. Now, if you're feeling a little bit nervous about presenting, this is a great way to start, because you will know that short story. It needs to be relevant, obviously, to what you're talking about, but you will know it. And you'll be comfortable telling it because you've told it many, many times before. And if you're feeling nervous, it will get you into the presentation. You're feeling very confident about something you know well. It will ease those nerves and you'll get going. It's a great way to start on that basis. You could start with a headline statement. Now, that could be topical as well. Blimey, if you're doing a presentation at the end of this week, Thursday or Friday, and it's anything to do with finance, you can, you've got a budget thing tomorrow, you could pick up one of the popular statements, headline statements from that, and use that to start your presentation. But a headline statement is a great way. And again, it needs to be relevant. My favorite one, if you're not sure of which one to choose, is a big stat. Whatever sector you work in, there's going to be a big stat that you can use, which will start your presentation and get your audience engaged. I did some work with the School of Social Entrepreneurs up in Devon, I don't know, a couple of years ago, whenever it was a little while ago now. And I worked with them on some presentations they were doing to a 200 people audience who may well invest in their business. And one of the girls started off and she said, this is the way she started. She said, did you know that in this area this morning, 45% of children went to school without a proper breakfast? Now, her community interest company was all about getting kids to have proper breakfast somehow, however that worked. Okay. But that statement, and that's the way she said it, it was a big stat, 45%. And you could see the people in the room were thinking, Whoa, does she mean me as a parent? That sort of thing. So you've got to have that big start. So choose one of those that works for you. And when you start it straight away. Don't waffle around at the beginning and then go into it. Go straight into it. The first words you say were just like the words I've quoted there from the lady who did that CIC presentation. Because what you need to do at the beginning is create momentum for your presentation. And then you need to maintain it. And one of the ways you can maintain it is to use a tool that you all have, but sometimes we forget about when we're doing presentations. And that's your voice. You've got to use your voice when you're delivering presentations. It is so, so important. Okay. And what I mean by use your voice is I mean about projecting your voice. I don't mean shouting. But you think about it. There's loads of things you can do with your voice which will help engage your audience. Things like the tempo, which is the speed. So you can talk quickly or slowly. You can raise the volume, lower the volume. You can emphasize key words. Remember how I just gave you that headline? 45% of children today. That's emphasis. And then there's timing. And very often with timing, we're talking about the power of the pause. Now, that was a 2 second, 3 second at the most gap. Okay. Felt like a long time, probably. All right. But it really is important that you slow things down, you use the pause. So if you're delivering a key point, the power of the pause is a key point, then leave the gap. Let people think, wow, that must have been important because there's a gap. But the only way you're going to really get good at using your voice is if you practice out loud. So when you're practicing your presentation, practice out loud. You can do this nowadays walking down the street. No one blinks an eye because they all think you're on some sort of gadget. All right. But do practice out loud and focus on using your voice when you practice out loud. Because if you practice and you just run through it, oh, well, this is a great presentation, I'm going to talk about practicing out loud, then suddenly you'll find yourself drifting into a monotone voice that you'll tend to use all the way through your presentation. And if you do that, it's not going to be particularly engaging for your audience to listen to that same voice in the same. You get the message? Right. Number 4, if you're going to transform the way you're doing your presentations is, you might have expected this one to come up, you've got to avoid death by PowerPoint, folks. Okay. And this is inflicting on your audience. Maybe you inflicted on yourself. I'm sure some presenters have. So if you're going to use slides, hey ho, here's some thoughts and ideas about making the most of them. Number 1, slides, they are not a script. Okay. So we don't want slides, ladies and gentlemen, that look like this, or we don't want slides that look like this, or we don't want slides that look like this, okay, or indeed like this. Now, this is a fairly live slide, okay? Now, I went to a business show a couple of weeks ago, and there was a kind of business breakfast thing beforehand, and there were 4 speakers. I think they had 5 minutes each. And there was a couple of hundred people in this big room, and dotted around the room were several screens like this. Okay. And I took a screenshot. Now, every single slide that every single presenter used looked very much like this. Goodness me. What were they expecting to happen? They had 5 minutes. They didn't. So if you put a slide up like this, the audience thinks, should I read that? Or the presenter thinks, should I be reading that? And one presenter did say, I'm not actually going to read all of this slide. All of this slide. That means they're going to read some of it. Oh, my goodness. So please, 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 if you want to stand out as a presenter, do not use slides that look like this. It's totally confusing for your audience. Blah. Anyway, I won't dwell on that. I think you've got the point, haven't you? Because, presentation, it's not a manual. It's not a catalog, a book, a report, whatever. It's a presentation. And a presentation is all about giving a flavor for your idea, okay? A flavor, not comprehensive detail. That comes later, okay? If you put the comprehensive detail, people switch off. Death by a PowerPoint is inflicted, essentially, all right? But people find it really hard to do this. I mean, look at this slide in front of you now. There's 3 words on it, okay? There's 3 words on this one. Avoid the kitchen sink. Okay. And that is really important because one of the things that most presenters really find difficult is what to leave out. If you've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes for a presentation, no one has any problem filling the time. Okay. It's leaving the stuff out that makes a difference between an average presenter and a really, really good presenter. Because the really good ones are very good at being ruthless editors. They get rid of the stuff that is not needed. All right. So if you want to stand out as a presenter, get rid of the stuff. All right. And it's hard because you think, oh, I really want to leave that in. But usually that's something that's relevant to you. It's not relevant to your audience, not relevant to the subject. So come on, folks, be a ruthless editor. It will liberate your presentations and liberate you as a presenter. And there's only 2 words on this slide. And I know that sometimes you get given presentations by somebody in marketing to do. All right. And they've got no idea how to put together a presentation for a live audience, either virtually like this or in person. They just think it's like putting a presentation together for someone to read through on their own. And somebody said to me once, well, how about, when they say they want to send the presentation on to everybody else? And I say, in that case, you've got to make 2 versions. So do the full version that the longhand version. And then for the live delivery, get rid of all the words. All right. You can leave those somewhere else. Okay. So be a ruthless editor. Here's a challenge for you folks. How about this? Is that next time you do a presentation and you're putting together your slides, use 1 word on every slide and then build up if you need to. Okay, so there's 4 words on that slide. That's quite a lot for the ones I've been sharing with you today. Right, that's number 4. Number 5 is you've got to run on time. Okay, if you're going to be an impactful presenter, you don't want to be overrunning on time. Most people do. And what tends to happen is 2 things. One is that they overrun on time and everybody goes, oh, God, and it's terrible for an organizer if you're overrun on time. Or secondly, which is probably the worst case scenario, is that they run to time, but they miss all their finish out. And ladies and gentlemen, let's the most important parts of your presentation are the bit at the beginning and the bit at the end. It's not the stuff in the middle. Okay. That's where you're keeping the momentum going. Your audience are, flowing a little bit, but your end bit is so, so important because it's the last thing you hear. And during that end bit, you want to be telling people what you want them to do next. You want to be summarizing what you've told them. You do not want to run out of time for that. So how are you going to do that? Run on time. You're going to run on time because you're going to take practice seriously. And people say to me, well, so how much should I practice? Well, here's a little routine for practicing. Number 1 is have 1 or 2 walkthroughs, okay? Just so you get a feel for how it's all going to flow. Number 2 is then time it. 2 or 3 run-throughs where you time it, okay? And here's my top tip for you to run on time. When you do the 2 or 3 timed run-throughs in practice, 80 to 85% is the time you need to take. So let's say, example, you've got the 20-minute presentation like this. In practice, that means you've got to deliver it in 16 or 17 minutes. If it's a 10-minute presentation, 8 to 8.5 minutes. Because on the day, you will go a bit slower. You will add something to it, that sort of thing. So you've got to get used to it. Now, when you're practicing your presentation and you're taking 20 minutes or 20 minutes, that means you've got to bin some stuff. Okay, so you've got to get those scissors out and be that ruthless editor. Right, let me summarize those 5 key points for you, ladies and gentlemen. And then I've got a couple of extra little things for you. And then we've got a chance to pick up any questions that you might have. So number 1, focus on your audience and the outcome that they want and that you want. Okay, but if your presentation feels as though it's put together for me, the audience, not you, the presenter, that will make a big difference to the way your presentation comes across to your audience. Number 2, let's not have any waffly starts. Let's get straight in and choose one of those 3 things I talked about that works for you. That short story, that headline statement, that big stat, whichever works for you. Number 3, use your voice. It's so powerful. And particularly when you're presenting like I am now virtually, it's a way of keeping your engagement going. But practice using your voice. Practice out loud. And number 4, let's not create death by PowerPoint. So come on, folks, let's get rid of those words off the slide. Remember, you're speaking the words. If you put words on the slide and you're speaking words, as the audience, I can't do both. I can't listen to you and read the slide. And if you don't want me to read the slide, don't put words on the slide. So that's number 4. And number 5, run on time. So take your practice seriously, time it 80 to 85% in practice. So I said at the beginning, you know, folks, that what we want to do as presenters is we want to engage our audience. We want to educate them. We want to enthuse them to a degree. We want to entertain them. And the fifth E is this, and that is simply this, that for them and you, enjoy it. Okay. Because if they enjoy your presentation, then they're going to react more positively to it. If you enjoy delivering it, they'll react more positively to you as well.